This is Fantology.
You may have heard of us.
Welcome, totally not serial killers, to another episode of Fantology Podcast. I'm your host, Josh. I got my brother, Ben, who will be with me in every episode. That's a shout out to the Carlin Brothers podcast for anybody that listens to that. And Jake, long-term friend. And we are going to be talking about Dan Wells' I'm Not a Serial Killer. Is that the name of the first book?
That is.
Yeah. So we are going to start this episode with a little disclaimer. This book deals with mental health issues. We're going to try our best to talk about them in a healthy way. However, we know that we're not perfect. So if we do say something insensitive, we're deeply sorry. And you can feel free to correct us in the comments or jump on our Discord and talk to us about it there. Just know that we're trying. And if we make a mistake, we apologize and would like you to point it out to us so that we can do better moving forward. Do you guys want to throw anything in there?
Sounds good. Yeah.
I think that it's funny that you called Jake a long-term friend when Steven always calls us lifelong friends.
Lifelong friends.
Yeah.
Shoot. Okay. I'm trying, guys.
I have known you. I have been friends with you longer than I have been friends with Steven.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah.
But everyone's rating system is different. So
shoot. I'm sorry. Well, guys, I don't host very many of these, so I'm sorry.
This is your time to shine. So Ben and I have only read the book we're reviewing, I'm Not a Serial Killer, but you've read all of them in the series?
Not quite. The way that the series works, as I've been made aware, so there's a first trilogy, then there's a short story, which I skipped because it didn't have it on audiobook and I just wanted to keep listening to them. So my bad about that. I would not recommend doing that because there is quite a jump between the first trilogy and the second trilogy, and the short story would probably fill in some of those gaps, I assume. I understood. I followed everything. It wasn't that big of a deal. And then there's a second trilogy, and I'm on book 2 of the second trilogy. So we're going to go through this. We're going to do a non-spoiler portion of the book, talk about why we read it, do a non-spoiler section, and then we'll give our spoilery thoughts at the end, so you have plenty of time to click off if you don't want to get spoiled, but feel free to stick around. We'll make it abundantly clear.
It's funny that like what you just described, if I didn't know what you're describing, I would have assumed that it was Mistborn Era 1 and 2. Like there's a one trilogy and then like a time jump, and there's like a novella in there that kind of, bridges it. And yeah, so it's ironic because the reason why we decided to pick this book up is because Dan Wells was recently announced to be the vice president of narrative over at Dragonsteel, which is the company founded by Brandon Sanderson. And it's been announced that Dan Wells will be helping in some capacity in the cosmere. The way that they've described it so far is that he's kind of coming in to help Brandon wrangle everything in. And they've been friends since college. I wouldn't say that they're lifelong friends like some of us here.
Long-term,
definitely long-term friends though. And so yeah, that's kind of, I think that made us all want to kind of explore who this Dan Wells character is. So that's why I read it, at least.
Yeah. So to be fair, I think for me, Dan Wells has been on this series has been on my reading list for a long time.
Okay, but be honest, was it on your reading list because of the podcast intentionally?
Yeah, sure. Because Dan Wells
still affiliation with Sanderson.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, since 2015, when we were taking his classes, like Sanderson's classes, like he's constantly talked about like Dan Wells and used this series specifically like as examples and stuff. And I've listened to No Excuses,
writing excuses.
Jeez. Yeah, writing excuses a bit, and then Intentionally Blank I've listened to, I think, like every episode of that since they started it. So obviously, like, yeah, it is like kind of Sanderson's orbit, but I've been curious about the series. So
I'll admit, for me, it was mostly because with that like position of VP of narrative, we've heard that, and I don't know if this is actually not fake news or not, so sorry if I'm spreading misinformation, but I've heard that he, other than Isaac, is the only other person who's been like given
authorized to
permission
write in.
yeah, authorized to write in the cosmere. So I was like, well, I should read some of his stuff and see, what that would be like what our feelings are on that. So
yeah, and there's totally like we should really do like a fantasy news segment where we talk about like the different theories of like how much he's going to do in the cosmere and stuff. I think that's kind of outside the scope of the podcast. I think we just want to introduce it as like, this is why we're reading the book, and kind of go from there.
Also, I will say that this was like my Halloween read, and these are great. Like if you're looking for an October series to jump in, I'm just going to kind of maybe spoil some of my thoughts for later on in the episode. But I think that this is like a great October read. You can get through like probably most of the books in like 1 month.
Your advice to all of our listeners is to wait
a year,
entire year,
wait a year
before starting this book.
Yeah, don't read yet, guys.
I'm just saying,
just
for
wait
me,
10 months.
It really fit like the spooky Halloween kind of campy, fun vibe that I was going for this Halloween. So, yeah, that
I could agree with that. Yeah, well, I guess with that segue, should we like move into our non-spoiler thoughts of the book?
Yeah, let's do it. Who wants to start?
I think Josh, you're already on a roll here. So let's apart from being a good Halloween read.
So great Halloween read. Okay, great. So here some of my non-spoiler thoughts. I didn't realize like that it was like an actual YA book, which this like it is a YA book. I think very clearly in that camp. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, I don't know how I wouldn't be surprised either way how it's classified. It's kind of like it's very similar to Mistborn Era 2 to me, where it's like this could be YA or this could be I don't know. Partly
because it's more told from like a teenager perspective. I think that makes it, for me, I know that like adult like it is told from like a kid's perspective for a lot of the time. That's like not a YA book, right? A lot of Stephen King books are like that, but like this, I think the fact that it is from like a young man, like a young man's perspective, makes it feel more YA than it makes it feel more like The Reckoners than Mistborn, I'd say.
I feel like I would classify it. Yeah, I would classify it as YA, but I think it is in terms of like writing and like maturity, it's more closer to Mistborn Era 2 to me than The Reckoners.
Yeah.
The Reckoners just feels more like pretty young YA, like
middle grade versus this is like YA.
Almost, yeah. Like I feel like this is like on the upper end of the YA,
like the Hunger Games spectrum.
See, I feel like I haven't read the Hunger Games, but
what?
Yeah. So I can't make that comparison. So, but
they're very different, obviously. I think that this one, I guess, is it spoilers to give kind of like a premise of what we're talking about here? Because I think that
we can give a premise.
Back of the book premise type thing.
Yeah. So the back of the book premise is that you have like, how old is he? 16, 15?
He's starting high school.
Yeah, 14, 15-ish.
Yeah. So you have like a 14-year-old kid who is seeing a therapist, and it becomes clear that he has psychopathic tendencies, or is that the right word to use to describe it?
I think it's sociopathic.
Right. So like he has markers that would indicate him as being a sociopath, and he kind of, I don't know if he idolizes, but he studies serial killers.
He has like a lot of anxiety that he is going like he will be a serial killer, and he's trying to like
he doesn't want to be a serial killer, but he's worried that he will become one, right? And so so these are kind of the themes that, and he also his family owns and operates a morgue, and so these are kind of like the themes that permeate the book. So they're all like there's a lot of like anxiety, mental health issues wrapped up in the core narrative of the story, which I think is why it maybe like feels more adult. But then you also have like the preteen angst of talking to the girl and whatever. Like you have like these very like middle grade themes that run through the book as well.
YA themes, I'd say. I don't know if they're a lot of the themes.
Okay,
I mean, say YA themes. Yeah,
people are gonna get mad that we're even attempting to classify it. So it's
Yeah, I guess I will just say it started pretty gruesome. So it starts with some like, and again, this is still like non-spoiler because it's like the first chapter, but it starts with like some pretty hardcore like body horror stuff, I'd say. Like it got me kind of like kind of feeling uncomfortable in my skin. Like just the very first chapter of the book, you know. And so it started off like leaning pretty hard into it. And then I feel like that was, you know, that made me think it was going to be more adult, and then it like transitioned to more of a young adult thing. So maybe there's like some whiplash there for me that made me surprised that it was more YA than what I was expecting after the first chapter.
Yeah, I didn't think anything was like too hardcore, but I think the writing is like well done for like the like YA target audience. I thought it had some interesting it's an interesting fun story, and like it's first person, but it's told in like a not, I feel like sometimes first person could come across as kind of cheesy, but I didn't feel like it had any of that, and it had some like nice twists to it. And I don't know, it was pretty engaging the whole time. So
it was short,
very engaging, very short, like short, fast paced.
Yeah, really
8 hours, 8 hours on audio, I think.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm not exactly sure on the page count. Very fast paced, kept me engaged the entire time. Yeah. So those are some big positives. And then, the plot kept moving forward, and we'll get more about this in the spoiler section, but like, I wasn't too sold on like some of the, you know, stuff, but I don't know. I think your mileage may vary on just how like well done you find the plot, but it was good.
Honestly, like this might seem like a silly comparison because I'm going to compare it to movie, and there's a movie made of this book, so it's silly that I'm not comparing it to its own movie. But like, it reminded me a lot of Disturbia. Like, I don't know if you guys remember that, like 2007 Shia LaBeouf. Yeah. And it's just like, I don't know why, but that movie just like hit the sweet spot between like being a horror movie, but like also like
just a thriller, a fun,
just like a thriller.
Fun thriller,
like a movie that you could go watch with your high school friends and like all get like some jump scares, but not like be too creeped out during it. I don't know. Like it just hit that sweet spot between, you know, being what it needed to be and still being like a fun book.
Yeah, I think a good description of it is like a YA Disturbia if it were written by Stephen King. Like a YA Stephen King.
Dean Koontz maybe.
Dean Koontz. Okay, I've read one Dean Koontz and 2 Stephen Kings, so I don't really, but just like I feel like there's some surprising elements to it that I wasn't expecting. I was like, oh, this kind of feels like something Stephen King would do, where it's just like, oh, I'm going to throw this in there and like kind of throw people off. So
yeah, okay, I could see that. Overall, like, who should read it? Why should they read it? Who should pass? And should we give ratings now, or in the? I guess we can give ratings now.
Yeah.
So I think before we do the ratings, we'll answer the questions that you had. I think who should read it? If you're like us and like hardcore Sanderson fans, then you know, good to read it just so you kind of know who Dan Wells is. Also, if you're somebody that likes everything that we've been talking about so far, then go ahead and give it a read. I mean, it's again, like if you're the type of person that listens to our podcast regularly, you're probably like a avid reader, and this is not like a book that you need to devote a lot of time to. So just go ahead and give it a read. I would say, I don't know. The thing is, I don't read a lot of this type of book, so I can't be as critical about it as I can, like, you know, a book that's trying to be a more epic fantasy book. But I would say 7.5, 8 out of 10, because I enjoyed it, and I think it accomplished what it set out to do really well.
Yeah, I do about the same, like a 7 out of 10. I think like I went into reading this to kind of explore Dan Wells' writing and see what he has to offer in terms of like contributing to the cosmere. And I think I could see this very similar. Again, I keep making the comparison to Mistborn Era 2. Like I feel like it's very similar to those types of stories. And I mean, this is this one book I read by him, and it is YA, but I feel like he has the writing abilities to take on more. And like we said, we don't know if he is going to be really writing for Sanderson, but
I think he will eventually. I think that's confirmed. Is that he will eventually?
I think he could be a co-author. I don't know if there'll ever be like a just Dan Wells, but I think more than being like Mistborn, I could see him like doing Shadows of Silence and the Forest of Hell type story.
Yeah, I think he could get there. I think from this book reminded me a lot of Mistborn era too, in terms of like tone and like I don't know, detail. But I could see him using. I feel like he could leverage his skills really well for the doing a little darker stuff. So
yeah. I want to see Dan Wells write like a dark, seedy underbelly of the cosmere, like book. I think he would do a really good job of that.
Dark seedy underside. Like what planet would this be taking place on?
Oh, I don't know. So I've only watched
talking about like Sadious's camp in
Insidious. What am I talking?
Sadius.
No, I know, but what word? I wasn't trying to say Sadius. I was like Insidious.
I don't know.
But I've only seen the first 2 episodes of Andor, but kind of like that, where it's like it's a little bit grimier. Like people are like, not everyone's really good or bad. They're just doing. I don't know. I could see there's a lot of potential cosmere planets that could would do a good job with that. For me, so I didn't know what my expectations were. Like I said, most of where I've seen Dan Wells is just on the Intentionally Blank podcast, and he's always kind of silly on there. Like he's entertaining, and I listen to the episodes, and I like that he's on there. But like I just could never square like him writing a horror novel, if that makes sense. So I always thought that it would be that I wouldn't love it, but I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. I would fall probably around the same position as you guys, like around a 7 out of 10 for it. I really like the pacing. Oh, go ahead, Ben.
I was gonna say I could agree with that, but like one of the first episodes of Intentionally Blank was him like describing all the serial killers that he had like researched and like describing their crimes in kind of like a joking manner. And I was like, this guy can like talk about really intense stuff with like a very like just joking air. So
I don't remember that. Mostly it's turned into food heists, and so I always hear him talk about some silly food heist. But just so I really like the pacing. I thought the pacing was great. I thought that the writing was better than what I thought it was going to be, if that makes sense. Like the writing never got in the way of the story, which
and this again was like his first published book, right?
I'm not sure. Maybe
not first published, but first hit. I want to say that like he sold this around the same time that Sanderson sold Elantris.
Yeah.
Or maybe Mistborn.
Yeah, maybe.
Sure.
But yeah, let's see. It's not coming up with an easy. Yeah, first published novel. I'm not serious. Only.
Yeah. So like for like a breakout book, this is great. Like,
Yeah. Totally agree. For a first book, awesome job. I think that where it could have used some work, like characters, the main character I thought was really well developed. I think that some of the side characters could have used a lot more work, specifically like his mom. And I don't want to spoil it anymore from there, but I think that characters besides the main character could have used work. The plot and pacing was a lot of fun, and the writing was good. So overall, I think solid 7 out of 10.
Nice. Okay, so I guess we're going to transition to a spoiler section. So if you haven't read it and you intend to, then go ahead and hop off now, I guess.
Okay.
All right.
So I want to talk about the elephant in the room real fast. So, and that is the like decision to make this like a monster thriller instead of like not a monster thriller.
That's that Stephen King element that I was talking about.
So I kind of had this spoiled for me because I listened to the podcast and he has talked about this decision in the past. So I knew that it was going to be some supernatural thing. I didn't know who the monster was going to be or anything, but I knew that it was going to be a supernatural element to it. So I want to, Jake, did you have any idea going into it or no?
No, I didn't. And there's like a line in the book where he's like,
it's like the first chapter. This is like a Stephen Kingism as well. Like,
yeah, where you give it away without, and then don't address it until like it comes up.
Yeah.
But he's like, and I thought he was a serial killer, but he really was a demon or something like that.
Like if he was a monster or something. Yeah. And
and I was like, okay. Does that mean like he's just a really evil guy? And then like, oh no, he's like a monster. Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's like knowing that it was a supernatural thing. I was like, okay, like there's a, there it is. I guess I didn't really have it spoiled because it was in the first like couple chapters that it was said. But yeah, that was when you said Stephen King. I thought, like that was one of the things I was thinking about too. I
enjoyed it. It did throw me off though, because I thought it was going to be much more about just like a serial killer, more grounded. But I enjoyed it. Yeah.
I think I had it spoiled for me as well, so I knew it was coming. I think that it allowed it to stay in that YA zone, because if he would have like killed like a person, that would have been a lot darker. Like if like if it would have ended
beating a aged woman half to death is pretty dark.
Yeah, but that's like different than like like killing someone,
I don't know, killing a defense or like grievously battering a 70-year-old woman.
She was fine
versus fending off a monster coming after you and your mother. I don't know which one's worse.
Well, just for him, like for him, I think it would have been like worse to kill someone because he had like fantasized about it so much. Like it would have, I think, set off. It just would have been a lot darker for the story, I guess.
That's fair. I think that one of the other cool things that it allowed it. Oh shoot, my bad, guys. One of the cool things that it allowed narratively to accomplish is making the true serial killer like a much more relatable person, right? Antagonist, because he was doing this for love, and it was like, oh dang, like that's like that's
the one thing touching. I can't. And it's also like the one thing that he can't feel. So it's like the one reason why he couldn't understand would be his motivation to do it.
I thought that was cool how he tied it in that way. Like he wouldn't catch that. He wouldn't have like been able to come up with that without his therapist. I didn't think it really made it super like sympathetic. The monster, like it's like, oh yeah, it wants to stay alive, but also like it's still like killing and eating people. It's like Invader Zim. You guys ever watched that?
I don't think that it was, I don't know, sympathetic might be the wrong word, but definitely and more like depth to the motivation.
Yeah. It was nice that it wasn't just an evil monster, like, but
yeah.
One thing I was surprised by in the book is like the whole beginning, he talks about how he's afraid he's going to be a serial killer because he has like these markers and like all these things line up. And I thought it was like, I thought he was going to be diagnosed with like OCD or something like that, where he's just like super obsessed with this. And it's just like this, like a compulsion or obsession or something like that, where or like a paranoia. But then when he's diagnosed with,
I think it's
antisocial. Yeah. And then I was like, oh, maybe. And then like his whole interactions with the girl he has a crush on, I was like, oh yeah, he totally is. Like he is. I don't know. I thought that was kind of a twist to me, even though like it was stated the whole time. I thought it was going like, it's just like, oh, he's just hyper worried about being a serial killer, but it's not, but it's baseless, but it wasn't. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that which we can talk about that. I think, again, as somebody who doesn't really have anybody close to me that struggles with these particular mental health issues and don't experience them myself, like it sounded like he could have done a better job, but he did like a pretty good job at like saying that we should treat him as like a person, and that he isn't like inherently bad, that he has these lack of feelings, but he wants to work on it, and that like not everybody that struggles with this, like in fact a very 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 low percentage of them turn out to be actual serial killers or violent in harmful ways. What did you guys think about that? Like, could it have been done better? Could it have been done worse?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like I just don't know well enough regarding the topics. Like on, I don't know if this is Wikipedia or another interview with him, he talked about like he did a ton of research into it, and I think the book's been praised on its portrayal of it, but I don't know. Like
I get it. Like it definitely could have been done worse. I mean,
Yeah.
it can also be done better, but like I don't think that. I think we're all pretty sensitive, like to stuff like that. Like just if you're like, I don't know, exist in 2022 and care about like some social issues you have like that on your mind, and it never was off-putting to me. So especially being published in 2007 or whatever, like maybe before a lot of like sensitivity arose around subjects like this to the degree it has now. I think that he did a good job with it. So I would not recommend it to anybody because I was worried about offending sensibilities in terms of mental health. I think that it treated like his time in therapy like as like a very positive thing in his life, which is good. Although rip to the therapist because that was sad.
Yeah.
I think that it like handled all these things in a pretty like in a very mature way. So especially when you consider that he was like in his 20s writing this book, I'm like, it's pretty cool that he's able to do that. So
was he that young? I think he was just probably in his 30. Oh, maybe he's 45 now. So
okay, so like our age,
early 30s. Yeah.
Yeah.
What? Any other like big spoiler thoughts that we didn't really talk about in the non-spoiler section? I thought the cringiest thing was his relationship with the girl.
I thought the cringiest part was that could have been the cringiest part, but when like he picked up the hitchhiker that was also going to try to kill him, like having like two killers like face off, and that was kind of cringe.
Yeah,
especially because that was like
for sure the cringiest part.
The like big reveal in the book. I thought that could have, I don't know, been done a little bit better. That was kind of my biggest complaint. But
yeah, good call. I think I don't know if that was the cringiest part. I think that was the worst done part, but I think still the cringiest part was the relationship with the girl.
Because if it's cringe, it's like you can definitely relate to the feeling of getting clammy around a girl at that age than you can like.
I think this is like the really YA part where it's like the girl exists and like is like interested in him, and like it doesn't really show like why she would be interested in him, and I don't know, just
the girl exists just to further
have the relationship. Yeah.
Although I don't know how, maybe she was interested in him, but maybe it was like a main character, like thing where he just thought she was more interested than like. Obviously, he struggles with these tendencies of, like stalkery tendencies. Gives off a lot of You vibes if you've ever seen.
Yeah.
Then Netflix hit sensation.
Maybe she wasn't like not necessarily into him, like had a crush on him, but like she went out of her way to like befriend him, and like.
No, yeah, but like the thing is with like stalkers, at least from my understanding, is that anybody that shows them like some type of kindness like that, they'll like really blow up. And so I think that could be true to life. Like maybe that girl is just a friendly girl, or maybe like where everybody's gonna have some type of positive interaction, and he just really like latched onto that particular one. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
But I agree. Like typical YA, it's like there's like a girl that like their only purpose in the plot is to give like the protagonist something to be doing. So
but it did bring apart just the fact that there was romance in there did bring about that part of me realizing, oh no, he is totally he has these issues. I thought he had different issues, but this is legit. He does need to be following his rules.
Yeah. No, and that was actually like, I have no idea if this is how people like actually cope with these issues, but like his rules like made a lot of sense to me. I'm like, yeah, this is like a very well thought out, structured like way of coping with life. And it was cool how like when he started letting those slip, that like it almost, as a reader, you almost started like losing track of him at some point. You're like, wait, he was just like stalking this girl like for months on end. Like you started kind of as a reader like losing track of his activities as well, and just kind of like knowing about it after the fact or whatever. And it really did give you like creepy vibes, you know.
I didn't think of that, but that's true. Did you guys think? Did you ever think that he was going to like turn into a serial killer?
Well, we haven't read the. I think
no. I'm just asking for the first
in
book.
this
I'm
book,
not saying
no.
whether he does or not.
No, in this book, I did not think that at all.
There's never like.
Well, I didn't think he'd become a serial killer before, like knowing that it was really a monster. I thought he was going to have to kill. I thought it was going to be like a Dexter situation, which it kind of was, but with the monster and the way it died, it wasn't really the same.
No, but in like his very like sadistic way of luring him back, like that was still kind of a Dexter move.
Yeah,
it definitely had Dexter vibes.
The first book, I thought he might become a serial killer, so I was just wondering. Like, I thought he might.
That's interesting. There's a lot of, I mean, there's a low page count to actually be like multiple.
Well, I thought it might lead into like him actually becoming a serial killer, like that he might end the book like killing the monster and then like realizing that he was going to be like a serial killer or something. I don't know. Anyway,
that's interesting. What about like the fact that everything just happened to work out for him? Did you guys find that believable? How like he had kind of, I don't know, screwed himself over in terms of like calling his therapist and stuff, and then like, you know, the monster happened to kill his therapist, and like the phone records were like lost or whatever. That seemed pretty convenient.
Yeah, I thought that, and I wondered if maybe, did he ever find the cell phone? He was like, I need to go get that phone.
Yeah, he like threw it out into the forest or something.
I wondered if that's going to come back to bite him in the sequels.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what made it a little bit YA, in my opinion, too. Like, was that kind of stuff, like everything kind of just working out, you know. I don't know. I thought it was good though overall. Like when you have that low of a page count, you can't account for every single thing that could possibly happen and like say why it didn't happen or why it did happen.
Yeah, that's true. And I think that kind of goes to your complaint about like the characters as well. It's like, you know, there's like his. I actually think that they did that a decent job was done with him and his mom's relationship. I think him and his sister's relationship was kind of shoehorned in there at parts, but I think that the mom's relationship with him was, especially like when you're at that age, your mom really does seem like an ancillary part. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but like just kind of a side part of your life. You know what I mean? So I wasn't upset about that. I think that his absent father with like the iPod gift, like that was a big scene, like a scene that built a lot of character and a very low page count, which I appreciated. So I thought that a lot of things were done well there.
I think his mom was done fine. I think his sister was done not great. I think his best friend was done really poorly. I think that
best friend,
yeah, but I mean, still, like, there's a character there. You can make them a little bit more interesting, right?
Yeah.
Especially with his dad having died.
Yeah, I think Brooke was fine. I think
the fact that Josh knows her name means that she's in the future books, Jake.
That's
Wait, what? No, I might
have giveaway.
Yeah. I think that who else? What other characters? And that's kind of, the therapist was fine. The neighbor, like as a character before we found out he was the killer, like I don't know. I could have used a little bit more time to actually care that he was the killer, you know? Like his character was built up after the fact that we learned that he was the killer. So
yeah, that's a good point.
I just wish that there was at least one other like really interesting character that could have been a foil to him, or I could have been rooting for instead of him, or in relation to him, or against,
or even one other character that you thought like it could have been like somewhat a murder mystery, right? Where you had like suspicions of who was the killer, but that didn't ever seem like it was that big of a part of the book, which I think was kind of a lost, like opportunity there.
Yeah,
like he didn't really have any theories as to who it could be. So
yeah, I agree.
But I really like their conversation around the campfire near the end of the book. It was kind of like the start of the like maybe like rising action if you're plotting it, but like that was cool. They kind of like talked about like I don't know life, and it was kind of like you knew that it was about to go down afterwards, but there's a lot of wisdom imparted in that conversation, so that was cool. I want to go back and read it actually because I remember really enjoying it. Okay, yeah. Should we do best of the worst? Worst of the best? Worst of the best? Josh, you're really struggling with with terms today.
Steven's gonna fire me. Worst of the best. I guess I'll start. Are you guys? Do you have anything you want to get in there before we do it?
No, just jump in.
Okay. Worst of the best for me. I think honestly the opening scene, like I said in the non-spoiler section, like the body horror stuff like kind of got to me, like with making the incisions on the corpse and like the way he described it, and like it was just kind of a lot to like open up a book like that. I get you want the beginning of the book to be super engaging, and I think it really did that. It was really engaging, but also I don't know if it set the correct tone for the rest of the book. Like I kind of said, it seemed like a more adult way to start the book, and then the rest of the book was YA. So best in the fact that it was a really kind of like visceral way to start the beginning of the book. Worst in the fact that I don't know if it gave you the best idea of what the rest of the book was going to be. So
yeah, I can see that. I think my favorite line from that was something along the lines of like, oh, like all the body fluid just like went into the sewer, which where else would it go?
Like sucked out, and yeah. Where else would it go? Yeah, that.
I didn't think it was that gruesome. I did like that scene, and it was a really good like Chekhov's gun in the book of like I can't remember who I was last on the podcast with who was not using Chekhov's gun correctly.
I was gonna say this seems like a term that Jake would take issue if anybody else was using it.
No, you got mad at me for using MacGuffin correctly.
Incorrectly. Yeah. But the whole like I can't remember the name of the device, but the device they use, one of the devices they use in the like embalming process, and how that's used later on as like to defeat the monster. But yeah, I didn't think it was that
fans
gruesome.
Don't quit on us.
What's that?
So hopefully the fans don't quit on us. That was just a line that they would always say.
They would always say, hopefully the fan doesn't fail.
Oh.
Yeah. Which it didn't.
But I would say my worst of the best was the oh shoot, I had it. Dang, you got me all sidetracked with this other stuff. Probably just the fact that he got like the resolution like ended, like just wrapped up too fast, and like it was like a good, like I liked where things ended, but how it got there was not really what it wasn't done super well in my opinion.
Like the whole scene with him luring the monster back, and
no, I really like that.
Or just like the very right after, like the
like the wrap up at the end. It's like, all right, and I had this alibi, and everyone believed me because of this, and yeah,
I agree. Okay,
yeah, no, that's good. So mine is that for how like I think I might have given this away like earlier, but like I could not get past the fact that he was willing to like beat this old woman up in order to like
that was a little far
to come back, because like he's such like a well-grounded person, like in terms of analyzing how these things will affect him and stuff. And I just couldn't, like, he had enough time to figure out like a better way of doing this, right?
I don't know.
I mean, he did kind of, his timetable was like elevated, like hastened a little bit, but
well, he didn't have that much time because he knew that as long as he waited, more people were going to die,
and it seemed like it was happening at a faster and faster rate.
Yeah, so I think that he decided that the reason it was happening was because of love. So he had to go, the one way to know that he would lure the monster back was by attacking the thing it loved,
and it had to be when the monster was like weak, already like needing food or whatever.
So he was trying to time it between like the monster. Yeah, so I think it was fine. Like, and he calculated like very precisely. He planned out exactly how he's going to do it. he planned out that, like it wouldn't,
yeah, but like the thing is,
long-term
maybe
damage.
I mean, here's my thing. He could have like was it chloroform or whatever? Like we make somebody pass out and then just like use makeup or something. Like that seems like a better way of doing it than like,
yeah, how's he gonna get chloroform? He's a 14-year-old kid.
Dude, I don't know. He also like lives in a morgue. I'm sure he could like come up with some chemicals. Like that's the thing. There's got to be a better way than like putting a bag over this old, like, dude, you clobber an old woman with a lamp or whatever, or the phone or whatever he used.
Yeah,
like,
she easily
there's a better than yeah, a good chance that they're gonna go.
I think it depends where you hit them. I mean,
okay,
okay,
no,
but okay. Last defense of the scene, because yes, it was very hard to read, but it also served as a climax for his character, like in terms of like, was he going to kill her? Was he going to
like
hold himself
had a hard
back?
time holding back.
Yeah, so I think it served the climax for his character arc, whereas the next scene served as the climax for the book.
No, I get that. I think that's why it's kind of the worst of the best for me, is because it did do a lot of things really well. But I think that I don't know, he could have, like, it would have been within his character to figure out like a similar but better way of doing it.
Okay, fair enough.
Oh, so I really like the fact that like in one of the first chapters of the book, he helped his neighbor like send his wife pictures on his cell phone of like I love you, or like the kissing photos. And then like it kind of comes full circle of now he's like sending them like these like horrific images of his wife. That was pretty
that was cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah.
Anything else anybody wants to say for wrap up, or I think we're good. We gave our ratings. I think we all gave it between like a 7 and 8 out of 10. This isn't the type of book we normally read, so I'm sure that there might be better books in the genre. If you have any that you want to recommend, knowing that we all like this for the most part, feel free to drop them in the comments below, join our Discord, and come hang out with us there.
Yeah, and use our affiliate link to buy this on Amazon or on Audible if you would so desire.
Yeah, we should plug that more.
And Josh, just quickly, like, this is something that you've continued reading. Would you encourage me and Jake to keep on reading it?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, they're fast books. Like, you can get through them in a day or two. I think that they've gotten better written. I do think that they do get a little, I don't know if monotonous is the right word, but like, let's just say he continues to struggle with what he struggles with in this book, which I think is a good thing. But like, 5 books in, it's like, yeah, it does get a little bit old reading about it, but the plot gets and stays interesting. The characters, I think that he does a much better job with characters in the later books. So I would say for sure the first trilogy, you should read that when you get a chance.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you later.
See ya.